Good evening. On tonight's episode of The Ball is Round, a late goal concession sees CF Montreal drop 2 points against Orlando, and the Canadian men's national team are going to set up a very busy month of June. All that and more on episode 176 of The Ball is Round. And good evening. I'm thrilled to be joined, of course, by Elias Grigoriadis, my co-host. Unfortunately, Hattie can't be with us this evening. He is busy. However, he should be back next week. How are you doing, Elias? It's been a rough one.
It's been a week.
It's been a week.
This
Yes.
might be the worst soccer week I've had in a long time.
Oh,
and the fact
dear.
that Montreal grabbing a point is the highlight of my week.
Yeah.
Speaks volumes, So
Yeah, I
it's
hear
definitely
you.
been a week. Yeah, it's definitely been a week.
I hear you. I'm kind of in the same boat, to be honest. Yeah, nothing to write home about on the footballing sphere on my end. Like you said, the draw against Orlando City is kind of as good as it gets, which is pretty dismal. So why don't we rip off our Band-Aid and let's get started. Let's break down that match, because at the end of the day, Montreal did manage to draw Orlando 2-2. We're acting like this is the end of the world. However, I think given the circumstances, nobody is going to necessarily turn their nose up at a point against Orlando City, which has always been a very tough team for Montreal to face. So first things first, let's take a look at the starting 11 that Laurent Courtois put forth for this match. Of course, there are a lot of injuries for him to contend with right now. Most notably, of course, Matthias Kokoro leaving injured in the previous match, and Joseph Martinez, who subbed in and gave a phenomenal performance as that kind of super sub, almost a whole match striker, picked up an injury as well midweek in training, and that does not look so great for him. So sadly, things are looking pretty thin. So we had, of course, Jonathan Serrois in goal. The same three backs started once again with Joaquin Sosa on the left, Joel Waterman in the middle, and George Campbell on the right of that center back trio. As our wing backs, we had Edwards on the left and Rouen on the right. Our double pivot in midfield was Samuel Piat and Mathieu Chouanière. Bryce Duke, after a phenomenal performance against Cincinnati, retained his starting position as attacking midfielder with an upfront tandem of Ariel Lassiter and for his first start of the season, Mason Toye. So obviously, like I said, depth is definitely kind of getting called upon here, particularly in the attacking sphere. What did you think of the starting 11, Elias?
Wasn't too surprised right after when you have a game like you had last week against Cincinnati. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then you kind of just fix everything else with related to injuries. So I wasn't too surprised. I think really the only debate was Sunusi or Toy as that final, player up top. I understand why you picked Toy. Big body can hold up play, also good with the ball. Sunusi, as we know, is a great super sub. As you saw in the game, we'll talk about later. But overall, nothing too surprising about the lineup.
Yeah, I think maybe my only thought was Mason Toye, when he did make his sub appearances so far this season, I really had not been wowed by him. I didn't necessarily sense like a grinta or a hunger or anything like that. So I was a little bit surprised to see him get the call over Sanusi, even though, as you mentioned, Sanusi has proven to be more effective as a super sub. But all the same, we know as well that Mason Toye is capable of like one breakout match a season, given his kind of recent history in the last couple of years. I was like, well, maybe this will be that match. And we'll see what Laurent Courtois has to answer for if not. So, as always, let's break down that match, because there was no shortage of events. But first and foremost, just a couple of comments. We have a
Mhm.
Robbie, so say hi to Robbie. Says hi, folks. Hope everyone is well. Patrick says, "Man, we needed 3 there," and I suspect we're kind of going to end up maybe talking a little bit more as we kind of reach the end of our breakdown about Patrick's perspective on this one. So I'll kind of leave that for a minute. So obviously, Joe, we'll start back to front as we always do. So Jonathan Serrois, involved in quite a lot of the drama around this result. Um, I have some thoughts, but Elias, of course, I'll let you go first on his
Yeah,
performance.
you know, didn't have much to do until he had, a whole lot to do. And I think that's kind of where we'll see really what kind of keeper he is. It's like when he's not just like in constant fight or flight mode and constantly focused on making saves, but more has to maybe navigate the nuances of the game.
Mhm.
Um, because we know from a shot stopping perspective that he's solid, right?
He's good. He's fine. Yeah.
Even the odd brain fart like what happened in Chicago. I'm not talking about the final goal. I'm talking about the cross that anyway. Goals like that they happen, but they happen in every goalie for the most part. From a shot stopping perspective, I have nothing really to complain about. But it's more about now managing game, managing a back line, managing um everything, all the intangibles that goalies kind of have to deal with that maybe you don't really pay too much attention to until it maybe bites you in the ass. And I think here is maybe where it kind of you're starting to see maybe a little bit of an experience. And
Mhm.
that yes, he has this time in the CPL and this is his now second season with as a proper starter with minutes and everything like that. But there's still some things where you're like, okay, he still has some learning to do. And when, they gave up the penalty, the first thing was if you can't break the lines and it's not feasible, just clear your lines. You don't
Yeah.
have to. They were managing the game. They were in a very good position, and that's how you let teams back in. And when you have a team like Orlando coming to town, you can't give them any opportunity to let you back in, or else it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think there's been a lot of debate on whether or not it was a penalty. Patrick White says he got to the ball first, and we'll talk about that in just one sec. However, at the end of the day, it shouldn't even have been a situation that happened. There shouldn't have been a call to be made because
Mhm.
the pass that Serrois made out to the midfield, which fell directly to an Orlando player, like there was not even a Montreal player in the vicinity. It's not like his targeted player got muscled off the ball or something like that. It was just a true classic turnover. So for me, at the end of the day, that's what's more culpable, regardless of the referee's decision as far as the penalty goes. Um, just the fact that there was a situation that needed the referee to make that call was concerning to me. And we've talked a lot about his distribution. We've talked a lot about how that's seems to be the main area that he needs to work on. His communication with his back line is generally pretty good. Like you've mentioned his shot stopping. Um, he seems to navigate set pieces decently well, but distribution at the end of the day, this essentially cost the team. It cost the team the lead the first time
Mhm.
around. So I will ask you because it has elicited a ton of debate. I've seen takes both pro and anti penalty on Twitter. I've seen explanations being given out. I have seen videos posted from multiple different angles. The TV replay kind of gave us an angle that definitely led me to believe it was a penalty, and I had no issue with the referee's call when I saw the TV replay or the Apple TV replay, as it were. However, Elias, I know that you maybe, I don't know if you had a chance to talk this one over with your brother or not.
Yeah, my beef with this call is, if you're going to have VAR and you're going to have such a focus of VAR is, in and around the penalty area, why was there only like two angles of this
Mhm.
challenge that we saw? Or that maybe, the refs were privy to? Because like Patrick said, right, there was an angle from behind that kind of showed you everything you need to know. Right. Like, yes, did he kind of clean out Luis Muriel? A little bit, yeah. But you know what? Defending is physical sometimes. He got the ball first and he made a significant impact on the ball, which is, you know, which is worth noting. The thing is, it wasn't super obvious from the two camera angles, one of which was just completely blocked, and the other one was just, surface level at best. So I think that, you know what, if you're gonna have VAR and you want to cover your bases properly, why are there not more angles available? Because
Mhm.
I think that he got the ball. I think he got it clean. Unfortunately, right within the mandate of VAR, that's not going to get overturned, which is unfortunate. But I think that ultimately, if they're still working on making improvements, this has to be one of them. That you
Mhm.
need more cameras, you need more lines of sight, because you can't, refs can't operate credibly without more information. The more information, the better, right? And I
Mhm.
think that if they only have so few angles, right? Games don't operate with like, okay, how do I make this play with the best angle so the VAR can see? It's like, no, they don't give a shit. So
Yeah.
I think that ultimately, yeah, I hope that change comes from it, but it's not
You're not.
a
Yeah.
it's not like a monumental, oh my god, like stone cold incorrect. It was more just like this could have been avoided.
Okay. Yeah, so you understand essentially why it was given in the
Yeah.
circumstances on the field. However, having seen what you've seen since, and for anyone curious, there is a video floating around Twitter from somebody who was behind the ball. Maybe it's floating around in other spheres of social media too. I just don't use many. Um, who randomly filmed that moment of Sirois touching the ball before indeed definitely 100% making contact with
Mhm.
like definitely he 100% made contact with Muriel, the striker. But we weren't gonna, I guess, hand over cell phones to the VAR official. So it is what it
Still
is.
took fan
And
footage, yeah.
yeah, at the end of the day, for me, the call with the information that was available was not a clear and obvious error based on the angles that I saw on the replays. So we had to live with it. And at the end of the day, an error in attempting to semi play out the back cost Montreal their lead, which we will talk about when we get to the striker part.
Yeah.
Because there had been a lead to give up. So let's move along to the back line. So we have Joaquin Sosa, Joel Waterman, and George Campbell. I'm gonna start, if you don't mind, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna
of
start
course.
with George Campbell. I've been really interested by the George Campbell that we've seen in these first two home matches
Mhm.
for Montreal. I really, really enjoy this added dimension that he contributes to the attack. He really doesn't necessarily have the physical profile of somebody who I would think could dribble and who could kind of be that nifty that far up the pitch. But lo and behold, he has some interesting footwork. He can play some great combinations. Gives me kind of shades of a Kamal Miller a little bit.
Camaldinho, yeah.
Kamaldinho, yeah. And I'm quite enjoying that.
Mhm.
2024 George Campbell seems to be growing, and that's something I'm really excited for as a young player. So I'm really thrilled to see that. Defensively, I didn't see a ton of issues with him. We'll talk about the second goal kind of later on because it was a catastrophe of errors on that one. But we'll
It
talk.
was a team effort in that one, I think. It was a
Yes,
to
yes,
be clear.
yes. There we go. A team effort. Yes. But individually speaking, I I do appreciate the evolution of George Campbell. I'm excited to see more of it. Be interesting to see if he can bring this form on their next upcoming match, which is on the road, because I think he gives opposition defense something else
Mhm.
to think about as well. So I'll hand it over to you. Anything else to add on George Campbell?
Yeah, I think George Campbell, we're starting to see the George Campbell that Atlanta fans were so upset to have lost
Hmm.
when that trade happened, that we didn't really see because we didn't see much George Campbell through injury or for whatever reason last year. And we were kind of like, he looks all right, but where's the hype? And this year, I think we're finally starting to get to see it a bit more. Laurent Courtois almost has his outside center backs playing as fullbacks when the ball's on their side. And you see, even with, Joaquin Sosa on the other side, but they're getting forward. And this is kind of the George Campbell that everyone would watch like through gaps in their fingers last year when he would go on
Hmm.
his joy rides. This year looks a lot more composed, but it's also because I feel like that's been incorporated within the tactics. And he's not just going like, all right, guys, I'm taking off. handle it,
Like, yeah.
but it's actually part of like the game plan. They go like this will give George the space to maybe push the ball forward, and they can cover for it.
Mhm.
So I am still concerned that they are leaving themselves a little bit exposed. Laurent Courtois did talk about it, how they're still trying to strike a balance between having this very attacking output where you have like center backs playing as fullbacks and you have wing backs playing as wingers, and also not getting caught out on the counter. And they haven't really been caught out proper on the counter yet, um, at least not at home. But at the same time, it was the first time for everything. If they want to play like this, on the road, then Seattle may not be an outlier. But I think that overall, I think overall, George Campbell and kind of Joaquin Sosa, who the two had very similar games, um, are really kind of perfect for this. Which makes me think, where does Gabriele Corbo fit in all this? And we'll talk about it later
Yeah.
because that just popped in my head again. But Joaquin Sosa and George Campbell seem to be gelling really well with what Hokuto wants from his outside center back.
I agree with you, and let's segue over to Joaquin Sosa in and of himself. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure. I can't put my finger on it for the life of me, but I am not 100% sold on him. I'm really
Mhm.
not. I I left the match versus Cincinnati, and I understand I missed that podcast. Sorry. With not the greatest feeling about him, to be honest. Obviously, the match against Seattle, we had good feelings about no one, basically.
Exactly.
Um, and so I tried to kind of watch him a little bit more, like objectively, a little bit more nuanced, because I was like, I felt like
Yeah.
everybody saw something I didn't in that match. But I honestly prefer Gabriele Corbo. I find him more reliable. I find him more trustworthy. Is he a little bit more conservative? Probably. And perhaps that's why he is not in favor in this
Mhm.
iteration of the Laurent Courtois tactic. But I find him more trustworthy. I find him more reliable. I just find him kind of safer as a center back option. Joaquin Sosa, he picks up some cards. I don't like his runs forward quite as much as Campbell's. I just think maybe the awareness isn't quite there as to when it's time to track back. I think Campbell is really
Mhm.
good about dropping back quite quickly, when his kind of involvement has ended. And I feel like Sosa's positioning is still a little bit iffy when the ball is transitioning back. Maybe that's it. I think I'm still going to need to watch a little bit more to nuance my opinion a little bit, but I'm going to let you weigh in.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. And Patrick kind of said it too.
Mhm.
Gabriel Corbel is much more of a conventional center back in that, Joaquin Sosa is kind of like a hybrid where he also has played left back. So he
Yeah.
does have both of those tendencies, which is they're both very good on the ball, but in different ways. Gabriel Corbel is more good on the ball in a build up from the back and retain possession capacity, and Joaquin Sosa is better at getting forward, doing what left backs do. So I think that it all depends on what you want from that center back. And I don't know, against Cincinnati, I thought he was outstanding. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed his game, but last night there wasn't that pop that whether it was a burst of pace or whether it was a direct ball or a line breaking pass, something like that. There just was no zip about his game. There wasn't that unspoken thing, and maybe it was you know um maybe that was because of the energy of the first home game or what have you. But uh I think that there's a lot more to his game than what we saw last night. And for that reason, it was kind of I left with that feeling that you left the Cincinnati game
Mhm.
with.
Okay.
I left the Orlando game with it because we had seen how good he was in all phases of play against at least I did with the ball in
Yeah.
possession against Cincinnati, and I just didn't get that feeling from him. His partnership with Raheem Edwards is very interesting, but him individually, I want to see a bit more from him.
Mhm.
So I think Gabriele Corbo deserves some chance at some starting minutes. It's they
Mhm.
have 2 games on the road now, so it'll be a little bit tricky to manage expectations, I guess. But I think that Gabriele Corbo could also bring, like you said, maybe some level headedness that
Mhm.
only Joel Waterman right now is bringing to the
A
back line,
little
and
bit.
maybe he's a little bit going a little bit crazy.
A little bit, and you know what? I think that's a perfect transition. The man in the middle, Joel Waterman, how was his night, in your opinion?
I don't know, Joel Water, something's off. You know,
Yeah, I agree with
This
you.
is the part in the sports movie where they find a way to get Joel Waterman to stop thinking about soccer a little bit and just like refocus.
Mhm.
Um,
Like, I don't know, they
because
send him go hiking in nature or something.
exactly, or
Yeah.
just like so some kind of team bonding thing, and then he just it's a déclic mental, right,
Mhm.
in French, and I think that um and because the thing is, I don't know how to like what to put my finger on as to like what's wrong with his game. It just he's usually so much calmer and he's so much more in command of that back line than he was the last, you know, few games. And I think that may also have to be with the balance of the back line. I talked about Laurent
Mhm.
Courtois' concerns about the balance of attack and defending, that maybe he just hasn't adapted to this new chemistry of the back line yet. So it'll be interesting to see as they kind of as these three get to know each other better, because it's very clear that Laurent Courtois likes these three.
Mhm.
If you can have a game like Seattle, then still start the next two games in a row, I think it's safe to say that the coach likes you. So maybe as they get to know each other better, it's got to be it'll be a bit more natural, because he does
Maybe.
kind of look uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, and I think we also wanna be really mindful, he's on his 4th yellow card of the season already. So
Yeah.
he's picking up essentially a yellow card every other game. So, he's walking a really fine line to catch his first suspension. I'm like, is he gonna be the first player in the league to get suspended for yellow card accumulation? I'm
Is
not
he
sure. I
really?
I haven't been keeping
How's
track,
he?
honestly, of other teams, and who's
Four,
got the
four
most
and eight
yellow.
is impressive. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the first one.
I was gonna say 4 in 8 is, it it's quick.
That's an impressive clip. That's like not even Ramel would get that. So
There we go, and that's yeah, that says a lot, I think. Yeah, I that's anyway, that's also something I think that we do need to be quite careful of for sure is yellow cards and accumulation, because I don't think we're a hundred. We do. There are a few players who have 5 yellow cards, by the way. Just
already,
yeah, I just looked it
that's
up. Really,
genuinely impressive. That's
I looked.
honestly, I have to say I'm impressed with
Well,
that.
there are some teams who have already played an extra match as well.
Still, that's an impressive level of like Brexitness. I don't know. That's just
Yeah, no, I looked
that's
it up.
really
Well,
good.
and it could also I'm not sure if no, because none of these players have red cards in the stats. I was thinking if it's 2 yellows makes it red.
Mm.
But not even that. Yeah, no, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. According to the MLS stats, there's 6 players who
Wow,
have yeah.
chapeau, good job.
Yeah, one of whom is former Montrealer, Aaron Herrera.
You know what? I'm
Um
not even surprised.
no, exactly. All right. Anyway, moving on, we'll see maybe, I think probably it's been a little bit different for Joel Waterman since he came back from Canadian national team duty. And so perhaps things will calm down a little bit. Be interesting to see, of course, if he gets called up in June, which we'll talk about later on in the show. But I believe we also had a question regarding Joel Waterman come in on our social media. Do you recall offhand who it was from?
I think it was Amin, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think we got a question from Emin this week.
I mean, I always ask the question. There it is.
No,
Yeah.
that was for just from social media. But let's use it now. You know what?
Oh,
It's
you
it's
know what?
perfect.
Oh,
It's
it
timely.
was from social media.
No, well, too
I
bad. We're
knew
going to
that.
talk
I
about it
knew.
now. It's
You're
timely.
talking about it now. Yeah.
All right.
Joe Waterman has 4 yellow cards in 8 matches, like we said, and it will hang on to the next until the next card he'll get suspended, right? Despite a good start to the season since he
Mhm.
returned from the national team, like you said, his level has been declining. Corbo's just waiting to have another chance. I've been a big proponent of the Corbo as a middle central
Yeah.
defender for a long time. If this really is a case of giving Joel Waterman maybe just a break
Yep.
to recalibrate, I would love to see Gabriel Corbo in the middle, because again, I do think he has the stuff. Um, under Wilfried Nossi, he was being groomed as Rudy Camacho's replacement.
Mhm.
So I think that he doth have the skills to definitely get that done.
Right on. And we do also have a suggestion as to maybe what can help Joel Waterman get his groove back, so to speak. And Patrick says needs to go for a walk in the old port with Bob Gainey. Worked for Kovalev. So
Sounds
there
like
we go.
the title of a Leonard Cohen album, but yes, maybe that'll work.
There we go. All right. Moving along to the midfield.
Yes.
So I guess let's do our double pivot first, and then we'll move to our outside backs. So Sam Piet and Mathieu Choinière.
Yeah.
How did you interpret their respective nights, Elias?
Every game I see these two play together, I get more and more excited
Mm-hmm.
as to what like a finished product can look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because every single game they manage to really functionally shut down massive parts of the opposing team's game plan, whether it be an overloaded midfield against Orlando, whether it be the build up play against Cincinnati. They're doing so well at kind of just disrupting the flow of an opponent, especially in a set offense. And I think that, you can't really, it's not flashy. And we talked about it last week, but Simon Piet again is showing why he needs to be a starter on the national team,
Mm-hmm.
because he lets people do their thing and he does all the thankless work. And he got rewarded for it, right? He got a beautiful assist to Mason Toy on the first goal. And I think that, you know what, seeing Simon Piet kind of apply his trade offensively, something we haven't seen in a while. We did not see under Hernan Losada at all. So having to see him be involved in the offense in any way is kind of a breath of fresh air. But honestly, I just think that Simon Piet is so consistent now. Has been so consistent this year.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just really just doing the job admirably. And Mathieu Choinière is probably the biggest beneficiary from it, because he's now not doing whatever he wants, but damn well near doing whatever he wants almost.
He has a lot more liberty.
Exactly. He's free to kind of take him wherever the flow of the game takes him. And I think that you'll then also get the best Mathieu Choinière out of it, because he's not burdened by all these other things he has to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with what you've said so far. I like that it's a duo. I think there are still times that the midfield looks a little bit overwhelmed when play transitions quickly, when possession transitions back. And I think that's more so on Laurent Courtois to balance out sort of how many players are committing to going forward, who's covering if a central defender roams a little further. So I think there's probably still some fine tuning to do. But when Montreal is on the ball, certainly I agree with you. They look very comfortable. They obviously have an excellent partnership, and that calmness, that poise, that consistency is there. We also got a question related to Piet, so I think this is a timely moment to address it as well. Did it come from Sam Savvy?
It did come from Sam Savvy.
I know, Sam squared. All right. So, okay, two. So there's two questions, but we can address them both. So Sam asked us, does Courtois purposely disregard the highway his system creates for the opposition to use in midfield, hoping CF Montreal will create what is needed through the wings? And how can you fix this? Every year, this team overloads the center of the field, and it's obvious. Do you want to take a shot, Elias?
Yeah, I think that Samir Piet talked about it in his presser after the game, where the fact where he talked about it. They were at times overwhelmed and they were kind of spinning on their head, but they didn't really allow any chances through the middle, any significant chances through the middle, other than mistakes they created, right? That penalty was created through their own mistake. It wasn't created through, any attacking play. The one bit of creative work that the one offensive chance created by Cincinnati last week was made through the middle, but besides that, nothing really happened. So if you look at like over the span of two whole games, let's say at home, where we got to see probably the most faithful adaptation of Courtois ball, there's been one, maybe two significant chances created right down the middle. So they may seem overwhelmed in terms of not keeping the ball all too much, but they're doing a very good job of mitigating any real offensive danger. So if they can manage to keep any kind of dangerous chance creation at bay, all while still overloading the wings when they get the ball, then I think that I kind of agree with Sam. He's willing to take that hit in the middle if it means that I get to unleash the wings completely. And I know that Mathieu Choinière and Samuel Piet are good for it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the end of the day, Laurent Courtois did promise us risky football.
Ask and you shall receive.
Exactly. He did promise that, and we've definitely seen Montreal get burned for it. We've seen Montreal come close, like quite early in the season. We saw them get burned. We've seen them, I think, learn to navigate that balance a little bit better as time has gone on. And I think it's reasonable to expect that, as long as the status quo is maintained tactically, they're going to continue to strike that ideal balance, on how much we're committing to the wings, how many players we're committing forward, um, you know, how thin basically are we spreading those two guys who are holding down the midfield and kind of playing that protective shield. So I think it's just a question of sticking with what is relatively working.
I'd say it's working.
Yeah, it's risky, for sure,
Mhm.
100%. It's asking a lot of those two players, but those are also probably two of the players with the most endurance on this team. So at the end of the day, if you're going to ask a lot of two players, I think those are probably the two I'd want you to ask a ton of, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I think, like I said, they are going to hopefully just fine tune the level of commitment that their team is making, in the attacking phase and in the possession and build up phase as well. All right, moving right along. Let's move to our outside backs, Raheem Edwards and Ruan. I'll start if you'd like.
Yeah, go for it.
So I understand that later on we are kind of going to look at the second goal in particular, so I'm going to leave that out. Overall, I thought Raheem Edwards had a pretty interesting night. One thing that frustrated me, I think, a little bit is it seems that he and Mathieu Choinière are trying to link up, trying to connect a lot, and it comes really, really close, but it's just still not quite coming off yet 100% of the time. And I hope that's just going to get developed with time because you can see a lot of really nice ideas between those two players, especially kind of in the attacking third. A lot of attempts at playing a quick 1-2 or a back heel or what have you, that come close, but maybe just aren't 100% successful. So I'm hoping definitely just to kind of see them persevere with that because I think that could be a really fascinating partnership. As for Raheem Edwards, I thought he had a decent match. He was very involved in keeping Orlando's right back very, very busy. He had a lot of time on the ball. He had some dribbles. His crosses were hit and miss. I would say he played some really strong crosses, but he also, I think, could have had a little bit more decisive play at times. I felt like he hesitated, particularly in the second half of the match. I felt like he should have perhaps played the odd first time cross and he didn't. However, I'm not 100% sure how to explain that.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. I think this was probably my favorite game of his up
Mm-hmm.
until the very, very, very end.
Yes.
My favorite game of his with Montreal, I think it was definitely his most complete performance.
Mm-hmm.
But getting forward, he hasn't really had the chance to get forward off the ball yet and really make those runs in behind and receive the long ball. He hasn't done that as well as he had last night. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
just adds another kind of facet that, yeah, you have a lot of people that can dribble with the ball, but maybe making those runs off the ball, which are a bit more inconspicuous, especially for a fullback. So I think that having him being able to do that would be really cool because, again, if the whole point of your offense is to kind of build up pressure and then find that killer pass, then Raheem Edwards, showed that he can. And we know that Juan can, but Raheem
Mm-hmm.
Edwards also can.
Yeah, definitely. That's for one. I feel like he had a bit of a quieter night
Mhm.
than Raheem Edwards did. I didn't have any issues necessarily with his play. And but I think it was just a little bit quieter than what we were used to seeing from Ruan. I thought he had a super dynamic game against Cincinnati, and this one was just
Mhm.
like a little bit quieter, but maybe it was just the fact that kind of Edwards was stealing the show on the left-hand flank that that led me to see that. But I didn't have any flat out problems, so to speak, other than the fact that I've kind of become expectant of, a really exciting, really, really fast, crosses on a silver platter type of player from Rouen. And this was just a little bit more of a lackluster, I suppose, night. I don't know what you think though.
Yeah, it was quiet night at the office for him, and I
Yeah.
think that it, it's not wasn't wow, amazing, but it was also there weren't too many grave mistakes. There
No.
wasn't anything really bad as well. And when you're
No.
a wing back, sometimes you just have those games, right? You're
Yeah.
not, you're not a 10, you're not a striker, you're not, where you have to constantly be doing stuff that catches attention. You could also just have a quiet, decent night at the office and hang him up. So I think that's really what we got from Juan. And you know what? It's also nice to show that he can also kind of maybe take a back seat if other people are on it and just do his
Mhm.
job properly.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, although they are overloading the wings, if Rahima Edwards is, completely at the opposite end of the pitch, then you do want Ruan to not be just as 100% far up and a little bit more ready, perhaps, to track
Exactly.
back. So I can kind of understand that. That's just kind of how things shook out that night. And Kyle Smith has been a really interesting defender as well for Orlando. So I can understand why it would have been perhaps more challenging to attack from that right-hand flank anyway. All right, next up, Bryce
Next up.
Duke.
Yeah.
So author of probably his best performance in a Montreal kit against Cincinnati, second consecutive start at home. So he had quite a lot, I think, to live up to. Everybody was very excited to see if he could maintain this consistency. And it was a little bit quieter. Was it bad?
Yeah.
Was it bad?
Yeah.
No. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you, right? Sometimes it's just, he didn't really put I mean, he put a couple feet wrong here and there, but it wasn't as bad as, for example, what we've seen on the road. It wasn't as good
Mhm.
as the Cincinnati night. Um, but I think now you kind of have to be like, okay, if that's like the minimum now for the kind of performance or the kind of impact on the game. So, because he had a couple moments where he made a darting run or he'd make an interesting ball, he would turn a defender. So there were still moments where you're like, okay, yeah, do something. And then there were other moments where he kind of just stopped. And I
Mhm.
think that again, that's the decision making that we've been talking about. And I think that
Yeah.
now that Dominic Yankov is healthy and he'll be back in the lineup, and like Patrick said, right, whenever Dominic Yankov is doing something, usually something happens.
Mhm.
Um, Having someone like Dominic Yankov that you could learn from is infinitely more valuable. And Bryce Duke himself said it last year, right? He didn't really have any kind of quote unquote big brother to
Yeah.
learn from in that position, right? Because if respectfully, if your big brother is like Matko Miljevic and Amin Hamdi, then
Well, the one of them is not an example you want to follow for sure.
exactly, and Ahmed Hamdi, who does have a certain technical quality, maybe not be exactly what you want from an MLS 10.
Mhm.
Having someone like Domyankov, who so far has looked very impactful, if he can stay fit
Yeah.
and be that good role model in the. I mean, Patrick says they're the same age, yes, but like if you look at their experience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think Yankov is maybe a year older, but if you look at their experience, right? One of them has played against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and the other one is now just getting started in first team football consistently. So I think that age isn't really age doesn't matter in their relationship. It's more just experience and
Mhm.
the way they go about it. So I think that Dominic Yankov is that quote unquote older brother that can maybe kind of refine some of the parts of Bryce Duke's game.
Yeah, fair enough. No, and that's an interesting assessment because yeah, at the end of the day, it is about experience. That's the biggest teacher.
Hmm.
Um, Nonetheless, I still think it's a better performance than what we had seen from him earlier on this
Oh yeah.
season. Even though it wasn't, outstanding. So I still hope that he can continue to build on what we've seen from him so far.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up is going to be Ariel Laster. So Ariel Laster, once again, kind of at the heart of the drama on the good side for Montreal. So he
Yeah.
was once again playing an attacking role. And again, I quite liked his involvement. I think he is demonstrably happier playing in this position compared
Mhm.
to left wing back. Um, Makes a lot of interesting runs, manages to stay on the right side of onside. I think his decision making in the final third is excellent. Obviously, scored what we thought was going to be the game winning goal for Montreal for the second week in a row. Alas, it wasn't to be. However, he's where you need your striker to be, and he's not hesitant to take that shot. He's absolutely willing to test a keeper and to rifle the back of the net. And so that boldness, I think, is also something that we've lacked in Montreal, particularly last year. So that thrills me to no end, honestly, to see it. What did you think though of Ariel Lassiter's performance last night?
Yeah, I mean that boldness. He was taking shots from 30 yards out as a wingback,
Hmm.
so I'm not surprised to see him try his luck as a forward. But I think honestly that his time at fullback, spending almost an entire year as a fullback, has maybe added a different like layer to his game that you
Hmm.
don't see from most forwards, especially most wingers. Is that element of not just physicality, but he goes into a lot more 50-50s now, and he goes into it with a lot of confidence, a lot more confidence that you would expect from a winger.
Hmm.
And he reads defenses much better, having been part of a defense, but not just knowing what they're going to do next, but he's able to act on them. He's picked up an impressive amount of interceptions. He wins tackles, and that's something that's so important. If you're going to be having this high energy, high press, having someone like that is going to be super, super interesting, because I think that he's kind of making Laurent Courtois' life a little bit difficult in that, this wasn't part of the plan. This was supposed to be like because of injuries that we have Lassiter
Hmm.
up top, and now he's got 2 goals in 2 games. He's leading the line in many cases. He's been the most impactful offensive player on the team. Along with Joseph Martinez in in the last 2 games. So I think that I'm very, very happy to see him in his natural position. He's overjoyed being back where he's
Hmm.
most comfortable. So I think that that could be a very interesting storyline that develops over the course of the season, because as you saw in the game, right, he kind of slipped into a more defensive role, into that wingback role in the late stages of the game. But it's having that kind of abilities that makes you so valuable in this league. It makes so valuable for Laurent Courtois.
Yeah, exactly. Agree with you totally. All right, last but most assuredly not least, Mason Toy. Um, we've seen great things. We've seen things that make us want to pull our hair out from this player, and it was his first start of the season. And lo and behold, I
Yeah.
think we got to see some vintage Mason Toy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, First off and foremost, let's talk about the goal because it did come pretty early in the match in the 16th minute. Sam Piet played that beautiful through ball, and Mason Toy timed his run absolutely perfectly, running off the shoulder his defender at the exact right moment. He gave Pedro Galese the eyes, kind of made him lose his footing a little bit, made him commit, and then had nothing but an open goal. And although we have seen Mason Toy unfortunately miss the target with an open goal in front of him a time or two, this time around he scored once again. So what did you take out of Mason Toy's performance last night?
I'm so happy that he got a nice
Mhm.
goal. He got a good. It wasn't some kind of fluke. It was well earned. It was well worked.
Yeah.
Because he really is, like, when he's confident and when he's feeling himself, he really is a very, very important player. And the problem is he hasn't been able to show it enough, be it minutes, be it injury, be it lack of confidence. But Samir Piet said after the game, right, it's especially for him, he is so hard on himself, and he's so quick to lose confidence, that
Mhm.
games like this and goals like that are so important, because it was a lot more difficult than it looked, right? On a surface level, you're in through on goal, go around the keeper, put in the net. Okay, but there's so much more that went into it, right? And I think that this was super necessary to kind of get that what's the expression?
The monkey off his back.
That's it, yeah. And open your account this season, I think it was really nice to see, and you could see
Mhm.
almost like a weight was lifted off him.
Mhm.
So I think that I can't be the only one whose heart kind of maybe dropped a little bit when I saw the trajectory of the shot, and I was like, please don't miss
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
but you know what? It went in, and I think that uh given just how difficult it was him for just like he could not catch a break this last
Mhm.
2 years, even the fact that went off without a hitch, I think is just so good, and hopefully this just means more and more solid performances like that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we've said that a couple of times already for Mason Toy
That is
because
true.
he has spent long spells sidelined by injury or just by lack of form and falling in the depth chart. And then, he comes, he gets a start, and then he wows us all. And then he gets a kind of a run of starts, and whether it's by necessity or whether it's just the coach trusting him, and it kind of all goes to hell. So let us hope that it's going to be different this time because, in all likelihood, he will be our starting striker for the next match at Columbus, which is definitely going to be no joke.
Something interesting, definitely.
Yeah. Um, so let's hope that things are different this time. Like you said, he's a player who's super hard on himself, and so I'm sure nobody feels worse about some of those chances that he's missed in the past than him. So let's cross our fingers that Laurent Courtois and his staff are able to kind of pump him up appropriately and kind of help him navigate the trials and tribulations that I'm sure are still to come this season. Lots of comments though on Mason Toy. So we have Tate who says was very happy for Mason Toy. Robbie says Toy scored a nice goal, but overall he was nothing special. Tate as well adds, good to get him going, looking like we'll need him and good for him mentally. Holy Gale says sigh of relief for Mason Toy. And I think this is probably in relation to the match at Columbus. Patrick says that we can get a point. Interesting.
Very optimistic. Welcome
Yeah.
to the club.
There we go. Speaking of getting a point, we did get a request. Before I move on to it, did you have anything to add on the lineup that we didn't? Oh my gosh, the subs. Goodness, I'm so sorry. I thought I was going to have a smooth segue, but alas, I forgot about our subs. All right. So the players who substituted on, we're just going to talk about the ones, of course, who we saw enough of to actually kind of pass judgment on. Gabriele Corbo did come on in injury time, but it was for a pretty short time frame. So we're not going to address him necessarily. But substitutes of the night were Lassi Lapalainen entering in the 76th minute, along with Sunusi Ibrahim. Dominic Yankov and Nathan Sliba also came on at the 83rd minute. So let's start, I suppose, with Lassi Lapalainen, who joined at first as a right wing back to replace Ruan.
Yeah, it was weird. It was just after seeing him as a forward again, it felt weird seeing him at right back. I don't know. It just he looked out of place, and I
I
don't think
agree.
he
He
felt
didn't look
comfortable.
super comfortable. Yeah, 100 exactly. I don't think he looked super comfortable. It felt as though he was really hesitant in contributing to either phase of play, which is definitely not what you want your wing back to be. That's probably the last adjective you want to attribute to their performance. And I'm kind of hoping that that is not a trend that we see going forward, whether that's that he starts instead of subs and can maybe build up a kind of a head of steam through the match until he probably does get subbed out, or he starts as in an attacking role again. I don't know, but I do know that the 76th minute sub on as a right wing back is not an experiment I'm super here for.
I mean, that also happens when you haven't played more than half an hour in like literally months.
True.
Right.
True. That is a good point. He's not in form.
And so I think that, it'll take some time for him to get his legs under him and get his repetitions back. But, it's just unfortunate because it's almost like one step forward, two steps back with regards to his fitness. So
Mhm,
every time we're like, okay, we can get some consistent lasty minutes, there's a new roadblock. So
mhm.
hopefully that's in the past. But again, kind of like with Mason Toy, I feel like we say that every time, and then
Yeah,
here we are. So
exactly.
if it happens, it
Anyway,
happens.
the immortal words of our co-host, let's wait and see.
Let's wait and see.
Sanusi, on the other hand, had quite an interesting substitute performance. Oh, okay, Elias, I can
Love
see
him
you're
off the
having a
bench.
feeling. Go for it.
I love Sanusi. I love him off the bench. He's a firecracker, right? You kind of just set him off, and then he just keeps on running until
Hmm.
the final whistle. So that's what he did again last night, and he didn't create the second goal, but he created the rebound for the second goal, and
Yeah.
you know, especially with Martinez and Kokoro out, he probably has the most energy, if you will, in that striker core now. So I think that he's going to be so important going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was certainly a wonderful goal. And I guess we can kind of tie that in as well with Dominik Yankov, because it was Dominik Yankov's beautiful, beautiful pass to Sanusi Ibrahim. Sanusi's ability to kind of just hold the ball until he found a comfortable angle for him to shoot at. Although Galaci made the save, it led to the rebound, and Ariel Lassiter had the striker's instinct and was ready to pounce on it and slotted it home. No concerns about an offside on that, thankfully. So I agree with you. Sanusi off the bench is the best Sanusi, next to Canadian Championship Sanusi, of course.
There's
Uh,
no better Sanusi
there
than
we go.
Canadian Championship Sanusi.
Yeah, that is truly the best Sanusi. Um, Definitely, I agree with you again, though, that there is a lot to gain for him from the depth test that the strikers are gonna undergo over the next few matches by the looks of things. So will be interesting to watch. A good contribution offensively. Obviously, from Sanusi Ibrahim, you don't expect a ton of defensive contribution, and things kind of towards the end of the match, there wasn't much more attacking verve left in Montreal, to put it politely. So unfortunately, that was kind of all we saw from him, but it was impactful at the end of the day. Dominik Yankov, let's move on to him. We mentioned he played such a delicious pass to Sanusi Ibrahim to set up what would become the second goal for Montreal. Um, he's missed a couple of matches due to injury and made, a pretty quick cameo. It wound up being closer to 20 minutes by the time all of injury time had elapsed. But nonetheless, I think it's kind of how we all feel is we need him to stay healthy so that we can see more of him.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the quality of passes that this guy plays is just gorgeous. It's something I could watch all day. He can see through a defense like he's got X-ray vision or something. Um, but it's like with several other players who we've mentioned. Are we going to be able to get consistent minutes from this player? And it's a little early in the season, a little early certainly in his career at Montreal to be making a call on that. I think one way or the other, but yeah, you feel that little bit of anticipation when he enters the pitch because the vision that he has. And then not only does he have that vision, but he also has the ability to execute that vision. But go for it if you'd like to add something, Elias.
yeah. No, I mean, his last media availability, I asked him about that, and just adapting to MLS and the traveling and the demand, and it's a
Hmm.
lot, right? I think
Yeah.
that's what people don't really think about is that you know when you look at the country he played in versus the country he currently plays in, it's like it's night and day, right?
Yeah.
From one end of the country to the other is like popping down to play the Revs.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the same distance. Not maybe again, I'm spitballing here, but it's nothing compared to a trip to Florida or a trip to Seattle. So I think
Hmm.
that that's definitely something that he hasn't experienced as a professional athlete,
Hmm.
and I think that that also kind of plays into maybe just kind of getting his body caught up to the demands of MLS. So I think that once that kind of kicks into gear, we may see him not as frequently on the injury report because, like you said, right, his execution is arguably the best on the team. Along with maybe Victor Wanyama and Joseph Martinez. I think he may even be a cut above right now, just because of that, maybe that youthful exuberance. But his execution is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we kind of talked about him being able to play a quote unquote big brother role to Bryce
Mhm.
Duke, and they are very close in age, the two players. But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like it when you see them not necessarily next to each other, but yeah, well, I guess if you look at them
By the way they
individually,
carry themselves, yeah.
exactly. So hopefully anyway, I think that's what I should have made the title of the podcast. Hopefully. It certainly would be nice to be able to see more of him. Uh, Absolutely 100%. And let's cross our fingers that those physios can work their magic.
Absolutely.
Final sub to take a look at is Nathan Saliba, who came on at the same time as Dominik Yankov. He, of course, entered to replace Sam Piet. So he had a pretty intense role in the central midfield. Kind of saw some highs and lows from him. He missed the last match, of course, due to suspension from the red card that he picked up against Seattle. Not a massive sample size to judge on, but what did you think of his evening?
It's kind of tough to gauge because he really
Yeah.
didn't have all that much to do. Um, you know, it was maybe a second too late pressing that may
Mhm.
have helped lead to the goal. By no means am I blaming him because 14 other things had to happen for
Yeah.
that ball to go in, but it definitely didn't help. And I
Yeah.
think that when he's been, yeah, as a sub every 10 minutes,
Yeah.
as the
There's
and he's still 19 years old, right? It's also important to remember
exactly.
that. I think that it's a bit harsh, maybe,
Mhm.
but ultimately, I still think that he has way more upside than downside, even with the performances he's been putting in.
Yep. Yeah, sounds good to me. And you know what? We're gonna use that as our segue to the question that was asked by Tate. Going into this, since you mentioned it, and I am just here for cool segues this evening. Tate has asked us, he would love for us to break down what happened defensively on Orlando's second goal. So, as you mentioned, it kind of originated from a player on an Orlando player, sorry, receiving a pass, and Nathan Saliba was the player who was meant to press him. I don't know if you would say he was later, if his press was lackluster. I think you could maybe read it both ways, or maybe I just chose to read it as kind of, it wasn't like as robust as maybe as we might have gotten
Mhm.
from a Sam Piet. It wasn't quite as biting, if you will.
That's fair.
Um, yeah, fair enough. And then, so anyway, the Orlando player was able to turn on the ball, laid it off, wound its way to the super sub Ojeda, who was able to pass to an on-rushing Angulo, who got that deadly, across the 6-yard box, low cross, and was able to finish in the back of the net. As you mentioned, Elias, about 14 things went wrong on this goal. So
Yeah.
as we mentioned, the player who Saliba was pressing was able to pass the ball to his teammate, who was completely wide open. I believe it was Duncan Maguire, if I'm not mistaken, who was just absolutely wide open to receive the ball and then pass it off. So why don't you pick up the torch?
Yeah, I mean, from a defensive standpoint, it's Nathan Saliba doesn't press as hard as he should. Mathieu Chouanier doesn't really close outside of the field. Joel Waterman lets his man run in front of him and doesn't really do anything to deter it. George Campbell gets caught focusing on Joel Waterman's man instead of Martin Ojeda, which is his own. And then obviously, yes, Raheem Edwards could have done better, but I also think Sosa could have done better as well, kind of mitigating that. So I think that, you know, Sosa and Edwards maybe boofed on their coverage.
Mhm.
If Edwards doesn't realizes he can't make it, he has to tell Sosa or vice versa. And also, I think that Jonathan Sirois in that situation, in hindsight is 2020, right? But
Mhm.
be aggressive. There was nobody else in the penalty area. So
Mhm.
if you go out there and you miss it, there's very good odds that or you just deflect it a little bit. There's very good odds that
It doesn't make it to
it's
Angulo.
going to your teammate. It's not going to
Yeah.
anybody in an Orlando kit. So I think that what he could have also maybe been a little bit more assertive and gone out to maybe
Mhm.
gather that cross or disrupt it in any way. So yeah, like when I said it was a team effort, it really was.
Yeah.
Everybody was involved in some capacity. So I think that it's situations like that where it's like team defending where you realize just how unfamiliar some of these guys are, and you realize yeah, they spent an entire offseason together and they spent now 7 or 8 games, depending on the player together. But you see still how much of a learning curve there is to new defenders playing together.
Mhm.
So their low block has been really solid all season, but it's definitely not impervious. Not this early in the season, it won't be.
Yeah, exactly. And, at the as well, I think perhaps we could even speak to just, you're never more vulnerable than shortly after you score a goal as well.
Exactly.
And
Always.
so, can also pose the question perhaps of, we were in injury time at this point. It was, the 92nd, 91st minute.
Mhm.
Um, and so there's also that reminder, of course, that a game is a full 90 minutes. Like you cannot switch off. You cannot be caught ball watching. You got to mark your man just as intensely as you did in the first
Mhm.
minute, even if your lungs are burning and your legs are feeling a little wobbly and crampy. So there's also that part. So I think there's certainly a bit that Laurent Courtois can certainly take away from this goal concession. 100%. And I hope that answers your question, Tate, or your request, as it were. So anything else to add before we look at the other questions that we didn't have a chance to get to?
That's about it.
Alrighty then. So we also had 2 other questions. They both came in from the same individual, however.
Those
So
are
I'm just
good.
going to take them in no particular order from Dr. Foot. Dr. Foot says, is it too early to talk about Serrois' mistakes and the points they cost? Orlando's first goal is a direct result of his clearance in the middle directly to the opponent. Playing time for Breza on the road. Oh my goodness. If Hattie were here, he'd be having a
Oh
conniption.
God! Thank God Hattie's not here tonight. Thank God he fixed this stuff. Yeah,
Okay, so anyway, let's address the first part. Is it too
yeah.
early to talk about costly errors from Jonathan Serrois?
Look, you include the one against Chicago.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not talking about the crazy win goal. I'm talking about the goal on the cross that he
Yeah.
should have had, and this one here. Those are 2 significant mistakes. And again, I still don't think that was a penalty. But the mistake itself, you don't make that mistake, and we're not having this discussion about a
Mhm.
penalty or no penalty. So again, it's the ball delivery, it's the movement, it's with the ball at his feet. He still has a lot of work to do, and I think this kind of just reinforced it. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's no way that this is enough to bench him.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Also, I don't know how benching a player is going to improve those errors because I think you need more match situations to remedy those errors. Like you can work on it in training until the cows come home, but obviously executing it in a match is a different story. We knew that when we were signing up for a very young or I'll say a quite young goalkeeper to be our number one, that we were due to live with some growing pains, and we're still living with them. Um, it's what we signed up for. He's 22 years old. This is his second pro season with Montreal, at least, of course, not counting his loan time in Valor. So grin and bear it. The
Yeah.
important thing is that things improve as the season goes on. Obviously, if these errors continue to accumulate, we'll be having a different discussion, and we'll absolutely revisit this question later on. But the goal, I think, is to look out for improvement,
Yeah.
and particularly in that decision-making department.
Especially, and also considering the fact that next game is against Columbus, which means it's a homecoming for Laurent Courtois.
Yeah,
And he is by no means going to play it safe. I think he's going to want to show out and go like, "Hey guys,
exactly.
look what I can do." So
Yeah, true that. Good point. And as well, just another thing, historically speaking, at least, I don't know if things improved during his time away from Montreal, but I don't think we'd be getting much better distribution-wise from Sebastian Breza if he were to be starting, based on his tenure in Montreal. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe things improved while he was playing in Switzerland. All right, next question from Dr. Foote is, in Columbus, in Nashville, and of course at home versus Miami, are you confident without Kokoro and Martinez? I'm going to put on a little pessimist hat. No, 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 I'm not.
That's so off-brand for you.
I know, right? We have to rely on the mercurial Mason Toy as our starting defender. I mean, Nashville are in pretty dismal form, quite frankly. Really sorry to start the season so far. Of course, they were juggling Champions League in the early part of the season, but otherwise, it's even since they got knocked out, it's just not been going their way. So maybe normally I'm extremely pessimistic against Nashville, and then that's probably my least pessimistic game of them all. I expect a lot of Columbus to have a, as we say in French, knife between their teeth for the Columbus match, and I don't expect Montreal to have a very easy time whatsoever. And of course, with Miami, I'm a little concerned that Montreal is going to have a home crowd that day to kind of back the players, if what's gone on in other stadiums in MLS at least is anything to go by. So, if we have players who are not coming in super great confidence, having had two really challenging road games to navigate, and then they come home to not really a home crowd, I'm not sure things are going to go that well. So at the end of the day, my answer is no. Maybe if Nashville's nasty form continues, I might feel a little bit better about playing them. But historically speaking, Montreal's had a really challenging time playing Nashville. So I'm not there for that either. Elias?
Interesting. So if we're going in order of Columbus, Nashville, Miami, no, yes.
Okay.
So not super optimistic for Columbus. I think that it'll be a good show. I think they'll be motivated to have some back and forth and have some fun. But ultimately, I think just quality and chemistry and just Columbus are so damn good all the time. Maybe a little bit too difficult to surmount. Nashville, you said it best. They really are just Montreal away at Nashville. Just
even though they've been there, I mean, they're second last in the conference right now.
Yeah, but where was Seattle when they went to Seattle?
This is so. Oh my gosh, you're putting on your Eve hat. Yes.
Right. It's the Eve
Welcome
hat
to the dark side.
has been against my will, has been forced
lent
onto
to
my
you.
head. Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, it'll come back.
But soon. I am looking forward to their performance against Miami. I think that this is probably a massive motivational factor for them. The fact that they can be, go 2 for 2 against Miami will be something incredible. Realistically, Messi and Suarez will probably be there because they don't have to worry about Champions Cup anymore, Champions League, whatever you want to call it. They'll be playing on grass. I think that really just those two things, And Montreal in the spring is nice, so maybe they'll want to come back. But I think that I'm still looking forward to it because I think that that's going to be a massive unifying factor and a motivational factor. And Montreal at home, it really just is that. Montreal at home it needs to be cited in a lab because there's just something about Montreal at home that defies logic sometimes.
Fair enough. Well, we'll see, because I mean, even though we're kind of we ended last night's match on a downer note, and there's a minute sample size to judge from, Montreal is technically undefeated at home still. But that being said, Robbie agrees with Eve.
Robbie is.
I know.
I'm convinced that
I
Robbie
brought him to the dark side.
A burner, and you just right in the chat during the show to kind of
just here,
to add more pessimism.
I agree.
Whatever you say, Eve.
Please don't inspire me. Please don't give me ideas to start like Pessimism Nation or something.
Oh my god, we need branding. Yeah.
Boy. Alrighty, so I think that concludes our CF Montreal chat for this evening. Let's move on. It's a pretty quick subject, but it's something I kind of found of interest nonetheless, and that is related to our men's national team, who I don't think we've talked about at all since they qualified for Copa America back in early March. So, with the announcement of a friendly versus France of all nations this week, Canada have set themselves up for an extremely busy month of June, not even considering the fact that the women as well are going to be busy at the Olympics. So, my gosh, a lot of Canadian soccer content coming down the pipes for us. But let's take a look at the men's national team schedule for the month of June. So on June 6th, they're going to be traveling to the Netherlands for a friendly against them. Friendly reminder that they are ranked 7th in FIFA right now, compared to Canada's 48th. They're then going to be taking on the French national team in France on June 9th, just a few days later, as those two nations are going to be warming up for the Euros. Then returning to the USA for the following competition, which is, of course, Copa America, playing the number one team in the world, the current World Cup holders, Argentina. I don't think anything more needs to be said there. That'll be June 20th. June 25th is Peru versus Canada. And June 29th is Canada versus Chile. So, busy month of June, and Canada is playing some very fascinating nations. I don't think they've played against these nations in the time that I followed this national team, which we'll say is kind of like my 20s onward. So really fascinating. What do you make of this activity and these friendlies that they were able to organize? Because I think we've had a lot of discussion before about Canada's inability to kind of find interesting nations to play. So what do you make of this addition to their calendars?
I was dreading it, and then I thought about it, and I realized I loved it because we've been talking and begging for how long now that they have high level competition and in a competitive setting like Copa America and Argentina, but just high level competition, right, to get ready for this World Cup, like France, like Netherlands, right? All 5 teams that they're playing in June are above them in the FIFA rankings. I love that. I think that that's going to be a massive learning experience, and I think that the fact that if they can get out of the group stage just kind of reinforces that. It adds some momentum, it'll add some confidence, and again, a lot of these guys that play in MLS that maybe you've played against Messi, Inter Miami Messi, but you've never played against Argentina Messi. And you just getting your hands on some of these forwards, some of these midfield, some of these players, some of these world-class players, getting your hands on them, running with them, playing at their speed, it'll only make you better, but it'll also only prepare you that much more for some of the other situations, right? And I think that, they played against Belgium, they played against in the last World Cup, they played against Belgium, they played against Croatia and even Morocco, and some of these guys that play in Europe may be aware of it, but I think some of these MLS players may have almost gotten like shell shocked a little bit, where they're like, this is an entirely different level to what I was used to, especially in that Croatia game where they were just walked off the pitch, basically.
Yeah, it was men
So I
against
think that
boys, yeah.
literally. So I think that, games like this, learning experience like this, you can't, there's no substitute for that. So yeah, I was worried for a second going like, oh my God, Kylian Mbappe is going to be running at, these guys. But at the same time, I'm thrilled because Kylian Mbappe is going to be running at these guys.
Yeah.
So, with all due respect, but when you've handled, maybe not handled, but when you've played against Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele, or Christopher Nkunku, or whichever players you're playing against, all of a
Any of the
sudden,
choices.
exactly, all of a sudden, teams like Peru, teams like Chile don't seem as intimidating.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a good point.
So I think that's also is probably going to go a long way in acclimatizing them to this level.
Yeah. No, and that's a really good perspective. And I truly hadn't considered that part of like, yes, these two friendlies are probably going to be a terribly humbling experience. I'm just looking at it on paper. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not psychic. I am pessimistic though. I anticipate a degree of shell shock as well, because there are several players who didn't feature in the World Cup who are now kind of regular parts of the men's national team starting 11, or, subbing into the match, whatever it may be. So, there are younger players who I think are maybe going to go through a little bit of that, oh my God, what is this kind of moment. But as you mentioned, they've got a really challenging Copa America in front of them. And kind of, I think most of us have a little bit written them off for the Copa America. But these growing pains are necessary to grow the game for our nation. You kind of got to go through this pain. You got to get used to it. And that's the only way you're going to improve until, the national team kind of gets its act together at the developmental levels. So it is really important. It's a really interesting stage for those players to get to play on. And I think it's going to be one of those experiences that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. So at the end of the day, it is a net positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Robbie sliding in with some info. Christian Jack, of course, at One Soccer, says the search for a coach is heating up. And that is music to my ears.
I am so sick of coach discourse. Until I see actual coach
until you
confirmed
see the guy
holding a
scarf.
kit or a scarf or something, until I see pen put to paper, I don't want to hear any more coaching discourse,
he's done.
honestly. Because I feel like I'm getting whiplash almost at a certain point, right? And we've just been jerked around too many times at this point. So we've had links to freaking Frank Lampard, Carlo Ancelotti. Although I'm still holding out hope for Carlo, but get him out of Madrid as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But look, I honestly, when it comes to the coach, it's been what now? It's been, we're coming up on a year of us being, either officially or not aware of the fact that there's going to be a new Team Canada coach. So when it happens, it happens. But honestly, these reports all are starting to sound the same to me.
Okay, Elias. Okay, so I'm really sorry, Elias. Okay, I got excited. I'm actually gonna maybe take off my pessimist hat here. Any news, I'm gonna cling to it, because I think I've made my feelings pretty clear that I don't think Mauro Biello is the right guy to lead this men's national team long term at all. And with the World Cup coming to Canada next year, they need to get a new coach in to get that team ready to make a respectable showing of themselves like yesterday. So any heat, I will take it. Same goes for the weather in passing.
That's understandable.
I'll take what I can get. I will cling to those crumbs, and I will pray to the Canada soccer gods that they are able to get someone to put pen to paper so that we can return to discussing this topic on The Ball Is Round, because I don't want to offend poor Elias' sensibilities.
I will cry if I see one more tweet now.
Okay.
No, I won't.
No worries. We might just get a spicy rant from you.
Maybe a little bit.
Alrighty. And Patrick does slide in with some optimism of his own. We might be able to get out of the group. Patrick. We did discuss this a bit when the draw came. I've written it off completely. But
it's not outside the realm of possibility. I think that
it's more plausible than the World Cup, which any of it was.
Yes.
Basically anything is more plausible than that, to be fair. Yes. I will grant him that. That's the best I can do.
Well, we'll take what we can get.
There we go. With that being said, shall we move on? Anything else to add on the interesting friendlies that Canada's arranged?
That's about it.
Alrighty, then let's move on to social media. Elias, you are the man of the hour. Unfortunately, we did burn one of our social media tweets.
We did jump the gun on that
earlier. No worries. Things happen. All right, let's get started.
This is from Dr. Foot again. And if you are in the place of Wilfred Nancy, he's talking about, would you rather get a result against Monterrey or show up to CF Montréal and beat them senseless? Would you be willing to reconsider your pessimism if they have like a full-on difficult game against Monterrey and they just they beat each other senseless, and then you're kind of left maybe a bit tired and rotating the squad against Montreal? Are you reconsidering, or is it really written in the sand that 0 points.
Yeah, no, I still think Columbus have enough solid depth to still handle, especially a pretty battered Montreal squad, who I think are going to struggle to score some goals for the next few matches. On the road, with that in context. However, to answer Dr. Foot's question, you want to lift that cup. Unfortunately, Seattle beat everyone to it. They broke the duck for MLS and finally lifted that Champions Cup, as we call it now. But you absolutely want to join that very elite group of MLS clubs. And so, yes, if you're looking at which match to prioritize, Wilfred Nancy surely has to prioritize his matches against Monterrey, 100%.
I am inclined to agree. So rotate the entire squad against Montreal, and
there we go. Problem solved. Everyone's happy. Okay, let's move on to our next tweet.
On to the next tweet. Yes, this is from Steve Faggy. Boy, the bullet Montreal dodged here. This is in response to a tweet from Irving Galea saying when former Toronto Mayor John Tory announced that the city would be one of the hosts of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the price estimate he gave was $30 million. Now that number has swelled to nearly $400 million, and current Mayor Olivia Chow has described feeling saddled with it. Do you think we dodged a bullet in Montreal? Do you still think it would have been worth it to have the World Cup in our city? Where do you stand on the figure being closer to, $500 million than what Toronto initially said?
I have so much. So, I can only view this through, I'm going to be honest, I struggle really hard to view this through an objective lens. And I view it almost exclusively through an emotional lens. And I wanted so badly to be able to see prestigious, the most prestigious sporting competition in the world, in my humble opinion, and people will argue with me, I'm sure, in my hometown. And alas, 'tis not to be. So, maybe this is also symptomatic of how I manage my own personal finances, but for me, money is no object. Whatever. I don't care how much it costs. I pay taxes. I don't know.
I heard this.
It'll shake out somehow.
Does it maybe soften the blow of us not getting any games that the price has become so obscene?
A teeny tiny bit.
Silver linings, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get you think a bit more optimistic.
Bit. Yeah. Alas, I'd still take it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
At the end of the day, this, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. It would also mean that we'd have grass at Olympic Stadium, which could be really interesting.
Super interesting. But instead, we're gonna get a roof in the next 10 to 15 years.
That's the most optimistic thing you've ever said.
True that. Alrighty. Next up.
Next tweet. Yes. This is from True North Foot. Mark Anthony K booed by TFC fans. The midfielder was subbed on in the first half against his former club, and boos were heard around BMO Field. Eve, what former CF Montreal player, currently in the league, do you think would get this kind of reaction?
I don't know really, because not that many players who are in the league left Montreal on bad terms. Really not that many. You could maybe make a shade of an argument for Rudy Camacho, just because kind of he was given kind of an option to negotiate with Montreal, but opted for Columbus. But even then, I feel like he left after a up and down career, very beloved by the fans, that I don't even think him. I can't think of really anybody who's active in MLS, at least. What about you?
The only player I could think of, and Holy Gale actually read my mind here, the only thing I could possibly think would be Kai Kamara, just because of the way it ended.
True.
He was a fan favorite, but the way it all shook out, I think that Maybe some fans might be a little disappointed. That could maybe lead to some boos. But yeah, I don't think there's anyone that overwhelmingly would get booed.
Mhm.
Um, Patrick said Matt go maybe
I
a bit.
agree that should he find
If he
himself
was
playing in MLS again?
if he was in MLS, then yeah, he will definitely get booed 1,000%.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he got booed, but he is currently in Argentina, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my god, how did we
Felipe, we
forget?
did not think of Felipe.
Maxime, thank you
Yes,
for oh my god.
absolutely, absolutely, Felipe.
And he is still in MLS. So there
Yeah,
we go.
booed out of the building.
Oh,
Um,
he and you know what? He loves the hatred though. He feeds on
yeah,
it.
no,
He really does.
exactly. It's one of those like parasocial relationships where it's like I hate that you hate me, and I
Yeah.
love that I hate
I
you. Type
like,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
When's
it's like
Red
your
Bulls
tears give me energy, except it's not tears, it's
exactly?
booze. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
he's still with Red Bulls, right?
I thought he was with DC. I'll look it up. Fear not. I'm
I don't
coming.
know.
I'm sure he's with DC.
Where is he now? Actually? He's in
Yeah, sorry.
Orlando.
I'm
I'm
gonna
not
I'm
thinking of
gonna
the right
figure it
one.
out.
Oh no, different Felipe.
There's a lot of Felipes.
Yeah, there's too many Felipes.
Okay, anyway, continue with
Anyway,
your
yeah,
thought. Felipe Martins. There we go.
but yeah, Felipe.
Oh, he is with Orlando,
Oh, he is
according
okay.
to yeah. Okay. He's
But
come and gone a lot. My apologies. He did move to I thought he was still
yeah,
with DC.
Maxim,
He moved
very
to
good
Orlando.
shout. Probably Felipe is definitely
Yeah, and
the because he
therefore,
does
yeah,
actively get moved. Yeah,
we dodged a bullet last night then.
I would have kind of enjoyed to see just for the banter. Just,
If nothing but he would have celebrated that second goal, that game-tying
oh, like
goal
he won the World
like
Cup.
his life. Yeah, and he was actually on the bench
Oh yeah.
last night. So maybe he
Okay.
did participate.
Maybe he ran on. He
Yeah.
when the bench explodes and they run and they go celebrate with the player. Maybe he was.
Yeah. I didn't watch that part that closely. Yeah. No, excellent call. Probably the number one choice for an ex-Montrealer that is booable.
Final tweet and the biggest news of the
Okay.
day. Final tweet. This is from Alberto Mora.
Oh.
Very nice picture with him, Joseph Martinez. And who is that?
Oh my
That is
god.
Matias Kokoro sans mustache.
Oh no, he lost his mustache.
Mustache is gone.
Is it like a healing thing?
I
Is he
don't
like
know.
sacrificing his mustache in order to heal his injury faster?
Maybe it's part of his recovery process. As he recovers, so does the mustache. But I just found that to be very important that everyone should see that Matias
Oh,
Kokoro does in fact
rest
not have the mustache on at
rest
this
in
moment.
peace, because
Rest in
that was like widely regarded as one of the best mustaches in the league.
exactly. So Joaquin Sosa has officially won the Montreal mustache off because his is still intact. We look forward to seeing Matias Kokoro and his mustache on the field as soon as
ASAP.
possible.
Yeah. No, good tweets tonight, Elias.
I was very excited about that last one.
And certainly, last but not least, of course, we have the Pops board for the upcoming road match against Columbus. So, would you like to go first?
I will go first. I will say 4-2 win for Columbus.
Okay.
I said goals. I predicted goals. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
all the goals
goals.
and more than for Columbus. And I'm going to say a 2-0 win for Columbus. I wasn't optimistic, still not optimistic. And although Nancy's Columbus can certainly they can concede goals, I think that Montreal are just a little bit too uncertain up top right now. And I think that they will be able to handle kind of the hastily assembled attack that kind of has to be used right now.
Very interesting. We are on the same page with result. I want to see a little bit more razzle.
Okay. There we go. And you know what? I would rather yours than mine, honestly. All right. So that does, I believe, bring us to the end of our show. So thank you to everybody, certainly, who listened along with us this evening and who sent us along questions, whether it was during the show, through the week, whatever. We're always super happy to hear from everyone and to kind of play along with everyone who joins in with us every week. So as you may be aware, we are going to always remain free for everyone to listen to. However, if you do want to help us grow the podcast and this project, we do have a Patreon. And if you do want to help us support then feel free to join our Patreon. We should be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week with all three of us present, knock on wood. So thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday for another episode of The Ball is Round.